video, I'm going to demonstrate another fun fold card with you because I know so many of you love the fun folds, as do I. And the card that I'm going to be demonstrating for you today was inspired by a card created by Oksana Semenska, and I really hope I pronounced that correctly. It's a simple card, there's not a lot of steps or measurements, and I just know you're going to have a lot of fun with this at home when you try making some of these cards yourself. So without further ado, let's start stamping. To make this card, I am using a piece of Blushing Bride cardstock, and of course this measures 8.5 by 11, and I'm going to cut this down at 5.5, just as we would normally, where we would get 2 cards out of one piece of cardstock. Along the 8.5 inch side, I'm going to score it at 4.25, which of course, yes, that is what we would normally do, but I'm going to do an extra score mark, and this is where the fun fold comes in. So there's 4.25, and now I'm going to slide it over to 7.5 and score this flap. So this flap is 1 inch. So I'm just going to take my bone folder and crease along those score marks, because this flap is going to get folded over on the front. But I'm going to keep it open for now, and you'll see why in a second. I'm going to flip it around. So this is the front. I'm going to flip it around this way and take my Blushing Bride ink pad and my stamp set. And I've decided to pull in Beautiful Friendship because I haven't used this set for a while, and I absolutely love, love, love this set. So I'm going to take this rose and I'm going to go tone on tone, which is why I'm using Blushing Bride. You could also use Versamark to get a watermark, but I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to stamp it off a little bit. And it's okay if you go over on this side. You'll see that little bit on the inside of your card, and that is not a big deal. So that's all I need for that stamp. And I want to fill in a little bit, so I'm going to come in with another stamp. And I think I'm going to use this one right there. And I'm not concerned about overlapping a little bit. It's just gonna fill this in and decorate this piece. And just for fun, I'm gonna bring in the leaves, and I'm actually gonna fold this over so as if this were the front, and I'm gonna take the leaf stamp and just fill in those little empty spots. And of course you don't need to fill it in as much as I am. Whenever I share a card, just remember it's just a guideline, just to give you inspiration and a jumping point when you start making your cards. Or you can copy them exactly as you like, but there's my pretty fold, all nicely stamped. So for this card, I also have 2 pieces of basic white cardstock, and these both measure 3 by 5.25. And I have a piece of Designer Series paper cut at 1 5.25. The Designer Series paper I'm using is on page 33 of our current mini catalog, and this is the Fine Art Floral Designer Series paper. It is absolutely so gorgeous. I love it. I love the colors, and that's how I pull out all the colors for my cards. If I'm using Designer Series paper, I'll look at the colors in my Designer Series paper and pull out the cardstock and ribbon and, you know, the inks and everything. It just makes it so easy. So I'm just taking some of my glue and putting it on one of those basic white panels, and this is going to go on the inside of the card. So I'm just gonna, let's move this piece behind it. So I'm just gonna line that up. And that Designer Series paper strip is going to be that strip that fills in on this side. So of course you could cut this piece at 4 by 5.25 and just glue this on top. And I'm actually going to overlap this just a tiny bit onto that Whisper White, because I want to make sure I've got the edge even all the way around. I really like this glue because I can slide things around a little bit. Okay, so there's the inside, so you can see how this is coming. So for the other piece of basic white cardstock, and again this measures 3 by 5.25, I'm going to run it through our Painted Texture 3D embossing folder. So I've got my platform, put that down, and the gray plate, and run that through. So I have that really cool, beautiful texture. Now I can go ahead and just glue this onto the front of my card like so. But I want to kick this up just a notch. And if you watch my last video, you know I'm completely hooked on the gilded leafing. So I want to add some beautiful gold onto this. All I'm going to do is take my First Mark ink pad and just lightly swipe over this. And I am not worried one iota where I'm getting that. I just don't want too much, but I definitely want a little bit so that I've got something to adhere that gold leafing. Now I'm taking my heat and stick powder and I'm just going to put that on. And now I'm going to take my gold leaf and just rub that on here and there, and you see it's so cool. And I know you can get brushes and things to rub this on, and I'll probably do that, but I'm not minding doing it this way. All right, I think that is pretty. Makes me happy. You ever do that when you're stamping and something just comes together and you're like, oh yes, yes, I am in my happy place. Isn't that pretty? It's so nice. So I want to add a wash of color. I want to add a little bit of Blushing Bride. So what I'm doing is I've got my clear block and my Blushing Bride re-inker. So I've just added a little drop, as you can see. Now I'm taking my water painter, and I probably should pull in a piece of paper towel. There we go. So make sure I got water coming out. And again, this is just basic white cardstock. I'm not even using our watercolor paper because I'm out of it and I need to get some more. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly do a wash, just a little section at a time, and pick up some of that re-inker and just kind of drop it and let it spread. And I don't want to cover the whole thing. I want some of that white to come through. So I'm just squeezing and letting it spread and moving it around here and there with the water painter. And where that gold leafing is, you guys, it's resisting the ink, just like our emboss resist techniques. It's doing the same thing. So again, squeezing out some water, pick up some ink, let it flow, and this spot here kind of helps fill in the blank spots. So you can play around with it, move it around. I'm moving it right over top some of that gold leafing. I want a little bit more ink because this is a little bit too diluted right now on the block. I'm going to spread this around. Add a bit more water. Pick up some ink and let it float. Move it around. So just playing with it. So I'm actually just going to take my paper towel and just dab off any excess water. Oops. And I'm going to set this with the heat tool just to speed up the drying. I had noticed that some of the leafing was not totally adhered. I actually took my block and just rubbed it flat, which also pushed more of that gold leafing into that heat and stick powder that of course warmed up again with the heat tool. So now I've got the beautiful gold and the Blushing Bride, and I just love how that looks. I could add more color, but I'm not going to. So I'm just going to go ahead and adhere this to my card front. And I almost hate to close that flap now, but that is just fine. So now we're going to close the flap, add some more glue. Isn't that absolutely beautiful? And now for my stamping, to figure out what color of ink, if you look here, it's got the ink colors that are in the designer series paper. So I want to pull out some Poppy Parade, and yes, Petal Pink is one of the colors in that paper, and I use Blushing Bride, but you know, that's fine. It's gonna look just great. So I've got some Poppy Parade, Flirty Flamingo, and I'm gonna pull in some Garden Green, and let's see, I think some Mossy Meadow for the leaves. Okay, so I have just stamped this image once with Blushing Bride, and I'm just going over it again a second time. And now I'm gonna take my Poppy Parade and just dab on a little bit of that Poppy Parade here and there. Stamp it on top. And I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna leave that because sometimes you can do too much and then it gets ruined. So I'm gonna pull this out. Okay, so I've got my leaves stamped, and I have stamped the center bits of the flowers with Versamark and set it with my heat stick powder. Sorry, I forgot to put the camera back on. So I'm not sure if this is gonna work, but I'm really hoping it is. We shall see. We shall see. Yep, it's looking pretty fantastic. Okay, so I have decided I want a little bit more gold here and there. So I'm just dabbing my finger right into the Versamark, and I'm just gonna dab just a little bit here and there, just so that I can add a bit more of that gold leafing. Okay, that's good, because I don't want a lot. I just want a little sprinkle. Sometimes these experiments work, my friends, and sometimes they don't. Taking my brush and taking away any of the heat and stick powder where I don't want it, which specifically is in the white areas, because I don't want to lose my design too much here. And then I just want a little bit of the gold, just a tiny bit. All right, let's heat it up and get some more gold on there. Okay, so you can see that I've got the gold on there. And now, and I'm not worried that it's like a little blotchy here and there. It's all good. I am now going to get a die and cut that out. So I decided to use our Stitch So Sweetly die. So I just used the rectangle, and I was gonna mat it, but I don't want to keep hiding more of the card, and I really like the softness of this as well. So for my sentiment, I'm gonna bring in the Timeless Tropical because I love the script in this. And I am just going to stamp, I think I'm just gonna stamp hello. So let me get my hello. And I'm gonna stamp it with black. Make sure it's really nicely inked. Yes, it is. You don't want to wiggle your stamps back and forth, because otherwise you're going to get the little edges of the stamp. So just push down nice and firm, just like I did there. And you see this also pulls out the little black bits of the designer series paper. So again, everything is still coordinating. Now this is going to overlap because I want to center it on the card. So I want to make sure I don't have dimensionals too much on the opposite end here, so that it's, you know, gonna stick where I don't want it to stick. I'm not so sure about putting it right in the center. I think I'm gonna put it here. I think I'm gonna put it right there. So I know I'm using basic white, but I'm liking the romantic feel of this card, and I really felt like it needed lace for the bow. And the lace, of course, is very vanilla. So that's what I'm using. Look how pretty. Okay, got some glue dots. My brand new take your pick tool, because I used mine so much that this wasn't staying in anymore. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I need a new one. Of course, when you're doing a romantic card like this and you've got lace, then you have to have some pearls on there. So let's see, let's stick a pearl here. Stick a pearl here. I love in my last video when I was commenting on all the cat fur that gets on my projects, how many of you have that same problem, because there's cat fur on everything. But we love our cats and critters, and my dogs tend to sleep underneath the desk. They're not on the desk, so I don't tend to have an issue with dog fur, but boy, the cat fur. I think that card turned out so pretty with the gold. And of course, I can stamp my sentiment on the inside and write, you know, my words that I want to write. But I think that is such a fun card. I'm going to show you another variation of exactly the same card fold. And this time I used an oceans theme. So I used the Well Done stamp set, of course, and I sponged on some of the ink in the background. I just used my ink pads, and I did emboss the little bubbles with gold so that it would coordinate with the gold strip I put down here. The happy birthday is from the Art Gallery stamp set. And then all I did when I inked up the green bits is I did lightly mist that with water. And I ran the basic white cardstock through the Seaside embossing folder. I stamped and embossed some fish and gold, and then the sentiment. So again, exactly the same card fold, and I know it's hard to see on the camera. In fact, I'm sure it is, but I did stamp on here with Night of Navy. So when I'm looking at it, it has that really pretty background to it. So there's yet another easy card that you can make with a fun fold, just simply folding over that 1-inch flap and stamping it, and just decorating your cards however you like, using whatever dies and punches and stamps. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. If you haven't already, I encourage you to please hit the subscribe button and the little thumbs up, and I hope you have a great day. Stay well and happy stamping.